special assessment and taxing districts for which said board so acts is now meeting in regular session. Only those items that indicate a special time will be heard at the assigned time. All other items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate the public and staff availability. So at this point, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Hemmingson.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any new employees to be introduced? Okay, seeing no new employees to introduce. Any reportable action from closed session? County
Not
Council?
today.
Okay. And I have to apologize to the public. We had a really long closed session, so we just got done a couple minutes ago. At this point, I'll take any deletions, corrections, or additions from board members to the agenda at this time. In order to add an item to the agenda, and the matter must have come to the attention of the county subsequent to the posting of the agenda, and the matter requires action before the next regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. Okay, so at this point, we will go into brief reports and announcements from fellow supervisors and 2x2 meetings and travel stuff. So we are, by the way, we have a timed item that we needed to change on the agenda. Oh. What? Yeah. So at this point, before we get started with the meeting, I'd like to take a moment of silence in remembrance of Deputy Sheriff Harold Esparza, a 19-year employee of the county and a friend of many who will be greatly missed, and we as a board and the community want to pass our condolences to his family. So if we could take a moment. Okay. At this point, we are going to go on to brief reports from fellow supervisors and board members as to what they've been up to for the last. So let's go ahead and start with Supervisor McNamer.
I'll be very brief because I left my notes on the back of my agenda at home. I did attend a visitor bureau meeting. Also air quality management meeting in Weaverville once a year. Because it's a regional agency, we have one meeting a year here in Del Norte County, one meeting in Trinity County, and the rest are all in Humboldt County. The most discussions have been about, how much better the air quality is now after the fires and everything, and they were very good at sending alerts to me almost daily during some of those days. We met with a group of us. It's called the Social Host Ordinance, which is what Friday Night Live kids want to get us to adopt. I think it's a very good idea. We still have a few details to work out. And I also had a LAFCO meeting where we fully expected the representative from this district to be there because we had some questions from the prior meeting regarding the library district, and I thought we were assured that someone would be here to answer those questions, but they weren't, so that one was still not finished. And met with several constituents. That's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Hemmingson.
Thank you. I had a meeting with planning staff and Elk Valley Rancheria concerning the water line and sewer line that are proposed to go out Pebble Beach to the airport to service that facility. I also had an RC&D meeting in Eureka, where the RC&D also is the home of the 5-county salmonid organization, and we have some funding woes that we're trying to get through, trying to get a meeting with Fish and Game Director Hopefully that'll happen the first part of next month, maybe get some of those issues resolved. Had a local transportation commission meeting, did the solid waste agenda review, went to the RCRC annual meeting. Some real interesting stuff, I think, came out of it. Some of the things that wouldn't pertain to us very much, but we had a presentation on goods movement, which is all about velocity, getting your products to the consumer as quickly as possible, which we have no main transportation corridor, either rail or interstate. So, but it was still very interesting, a very interesting topic, and a different perspective than I had looked at before. Also had a panel presentation on AB 109, mostly on how it's affecting safety, sheriff's departments, and things like that. Very interesting discussion about environmental regulations, and there was a person from the EPA there who was very interesting, and just happened to mention that the water quality board now, you can actually contact members that are on that board rather than having to go through staff. That's a huge jump, and I'm thinking that that's something that maybe the Coastal Commission should be looking at, as well as transparency in their staff meetings. It's very difficult to find out what's going on at the staff level, because those are very closed, I think. In most cases, to find out what's going on and what they're discussing, what their issues are. But anyway, the meeting, we also had a presentation on tribal fee to trust lands that impact us. And then, of course, we had a presentation on social media, and evidently we should all be tweeting and on Facebook. And so far, I haven't jumped in yet, but I'm thinking it's probably going to have to happen. And as Supervisor McNamer said, we had a LAFCO meeting and continued the library MSR and SOI hearing, because we can't seem to get anybody from the library district to attend. That's about it for me.
All right. Supervisor McClure.
Yes, thank you. Immediately following our last meeting, I left for Fort Bragg, where the Coastal Commission met for the first time in 40 years in Fort Bragg, and the people of Fort Bragg were truly thankful and very responsive, because it was almost like when they came here for the first time. And in fact, it has triggered, I've gotten 2 requests from Greg Burns, our lobbyist, that he has a couple of coastal communities that are saying, how do we get to have the Coastal Commission come to our community? So I think it's important to realize that small communities want to be able to reach out to those state agencies, and the state agencies need to be responsive. So it was a great visit, and it was also one of Fort Bragg's primary issues is that they have that mill property that is actually 1/3 of their town, and it has been closed off for over 100 years for public access because it was all privately owned mill property. And through the Coastal Conservancy and through the work of the people in Fort Bragg and through the work of the Coastal Commission, there is now part of a coastal trail that has opened up a piece of coastline that has been literally closed for 100 years, will be open for access for people to walk and be on that trail, and probably open up some great abalone diving areas in there that people haven't been able to get to unless they knew the property owner. So and also during the Coastal Commission meeting, Jared Huffman came over for one of the receptions, and we were able to talk a little bit about Del Norte County and some of my ideas that I am trying to float with him, that maybe, I know we don't have earmarks, but I'm starting to think that with our California lack of highway dollars that we have in keeping our roads open in this part of the world and improving them, that maybe part of the reach should be highway dollars through national park, because we are part of the national park, and that's why. So he was a bit receptive, but I know it's a little bit out of the box, so I'm not sure. I'm going to work on it. The loan committee met, and there was a house that we had to put into foreclosure, that will happen. We also realized that we lost an important member of our community, moved away, and that was Ben Cameron, who had been on the loan committee forever. Probably to the majority of us in this county, we knew him as Banker Ben, but he's moved, and so that was too bad that happened. Then when I came back from Coastal, we had our RAC meeting where we had proposals of over $900,000 and only about $250,000 to allocate. So we had difficult decisions to do, and that'll be later on in the agenda. But we were able to be very successful. I had a blight call, and then when I got back, when I called and left a message with the blight officer, I had another call from the same person complaining that when I picked up the telephone, it was like, okay, and gave the call back, and it was a thank you. It was done. And so that was, it's a sign that it does work, that people need to contact us if they have issues. Rather than letting things fester, it's more important for us to be able to figure solution and find ways to take care of that. The Redwood Park Association is adding several new board members, and we are in the final steps of the contract with Save the Redwoods League to be able to keep the Mill Creek Gate open. One of the advantages that we didn't know was going to happen is that the $20,000, the $10,000 the RPA, and the $10,000 that the Save the Redwoods League were putting up in order to keep these gates open for the weekends, now with the dollars that were located within the park budget, anybody that stood up and offered dollars, they're going to double it down. So now we have $40,000. So that was a wonderful thing that happened. The very next day, then I went into, I had shoulder surgery. Lucky that we have Sutter Coast Hospital. I was treated very kindly, very well there, and had a surgery that was in and out same day kind of thing. And then my next 4 days I was kind of down, and here I am. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Finnegan.
I left one thing off, and that is that the MPA, the Marine Life Monitoring people, have extended the RFP and preparing the RFP until November. But Secretary Laird's office, I think everyone got a copy of the letter. Secretary Laird's office is fairly adamant that the monitoring group that is currently in charge is going to remain in charge. I've had a couple of different phone calls kind of trying to push back, and if anybody wants to join in on that, it needs to be joined in on, because when you look at the MLPAs, at the $4 million per region that has been awarded, there's about 11 people, 11 organizations that have been awarded in the first 3, and probably will be awarded in the 4th. And I am fighting hard that I believe that this region should be, the $4 million should be awarded via this region, and having Humboldt State as our primary science center, as opposed, I know that Scripps is very good, I know that UC Santa Barbara is very good, I know that Santa Cruz research is very good. But unless we have opportunity to increase our ability to do research here through Humboldt State, we will continue to have Santa Barbara, and we will continue to have leadership in the South. And I believe that we have bright minds up here, so I'm trying to push that the monitoring be through HSU, and that those RFPs need to tie themselves to our university here. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Finnegan.
Yeah, I also had very few meetings. Started off really with quite a few talks from constituents, lots of phone calls, a few visits, everything from motorcycles on the levee in Klamath to Klamath Fire and vacancies on the board. Down there, dogs, blight, poor reception of cable TVs, you know, which it is a problem, especially when the football games go off. But anyway, and the mobile home park down in Klamath, just a myriad of things of taking care of constituents' needs, and sometimes all you can do is listen, and most of the time, though, you have to try to find solutions. Then I went to Regional Council of Rural Counties, and I'm going to leave a lot of that to Supervisor Sullivan because I saw he had the pamphlet on most of the workshops, excellent workshops, a lot that we are going to put practical application to on a local level here almost immediately. But at RCRC in the board meeting, a lot of it was focused on SRA fees, and I'm sure that I fielded a lot of calls on SRA fees as well. At the clerk's office, there is the information on where to file the appeal and how to file the appeal, and I urge everybody to do that because as mad as you are now, you're going to get madder in about 90 days, if not sooner, because the bill you got was in arrearages, and you're going to get another one for the current bill for the same amount of money. So please appeal it. Part of what we also talked about was the legislation and how they operate in the last days, and I gave you a little insight into it last meeting, but a lot of it pertained to the SRA fees. There was an opportunity to do away with the, have a legislative fix to completely repeal the SRA fees, and the legislature chose not to do it. And part of the dynamic at the very last minute, because the TPZ thing, the forestry revamping was done, the Republicans even didn't care too much about the single taxpayer, which dealt with multinational corporations that have business in another state. If that state had less of a sales tax, then they could take the tax increment from that state rather than California. Anyway, all the opposition, and it came down to the Howard Jarvis people, the people that are suing on your behalf and whose website you're directed to, didn't want the legislature to do away with the SRA fees because they wanted to champion it in court. So that's how devious a lot of this stuff is. One of the people that the groups that's going to be championing the lawsuit wanted to do the lawsuit rather than eradicate the problem altogether. It's unfortunate the way it goes, which leads me into Prop 31, which we had a discussion, which RC came down in favor of supporting. And I would urge everybody out there that's going to hear this as well as here to take a look and really read Prop 31. What it is the Government Accountability, Government Performance and Accountability Act is being put forth by California Forward. And California Forward has been around for a while, and if this doesn't pass, they'll probably go away for another 30 years. And it has to do with the budget process as well as accountability with the legislature. Right now, what you saw was a bunch of gut and amends. And by that I mean a bill that had to do with water quality that wasn't going anywhere. They would take that bill because it had a reservation spot with a certain committee or whatnot, and they would completely change it, and maybe it had to do with forestry that had absolutely nothing to do with the intent, or it had to do with criminal prosecution. So they would gut what the intent of the bill was, they would change the name, they would amend it, and they would pass through something. So what happens is if you were tracking that bill that had to do with air quality and all of a sudden it has to do with something else, you wouldn't know it, and it would go through at the last minute. So part of it is that a bill has to be in print for 3 days before it can be voted on, is part of it. A novel idea, but a good idea. Right now it doesn't have to be in print. It can be done behind closed doors. You don't even know it got voted on. So that's part of it. The budget process would take place on a 2-year, it would be biennial budget instead of every year going through this. Another thing would be if there's an expenditure, I think in addition, over $25 million, that the state, as part of the budget process, if it's for an agency or a program, has to demonstrate where that money's coming from. They can't just pass a budget without knowing, so sort of like PAYGO. And anyway, take a look at it. RCRC supported it. We all know there needs to be change in the budget process as well as in the legislative process, and maybe this is the way to go. Other than that, spend time with family or my daughter, and that's it.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Finnegan. It's been a busy couple weeks. Attended the RAC meeting with Supervisor McClure, and I want to thank her for putting item 23 on the agenda. We are going to request that we move funds over from Title 322. There were a lot of good projects, and really what came down the rack this time and actually went much quicker, there was less money because it was a one-year allocation, and two, there were less proposals. Not to take away from the proposals, they were very good proposals. So there should be some road projects that get done for county residents, and that will benefit a lot of users. So anyway, good meeting on that. Had attended a proactive financial committee meeting for the county, looking at refinancing the county certificates of participation, which could save the county some revenue on an annual basis. We'll see where that goes. Had lunch with our CEO and the folks from Green Diamond, specifically Neil Ewald, Gary Renierson, and Ruth Ann Schulte. And we really the point of the meeting was to see Green Diamond's involvement in the community. They are the largest private landowner, and they have, through our lunch and different conversations, have made a commitment to the community, and we should be seeing a lot more of them going forward. So that was encouraging news on that. Also, we had a meeting with, attended a local transportation commission meeting, and had a meeting with and I know California Endowment's been involved as well as Wild Rivers, but there's a Smith River Community Organization, and we're actively working to have some activities after school for the kids in Smith River. And in coordination with the Smith River Baptist Church up there at the gymnasium, they are going to start doing open gym for kids after school. It's a really encouraging project, and the county, of course, we've got staff that can help with that, and we've been involved as well. And I appreciate John Horner and CAO Jay Serena with their involvement to get this thing up and going. October 3rd at 6 o'clock at Smith River Baptist Church is the kickoff, or the celebration to kick off this event. So hopefully it can lead to more activities, but it is encouraging to see, you don't always have to depend on government to do this stuff. The local community can get a lot of this stuff going, and a local community is going to be doing a lot of it. So it just has to do with taking an active role. I know a lot of those ladies that were involved in the group were a little reluctant and kind of shy about dealing with county government at the time, but I think their confidence has gone up, and there is a self-empowerment, if you will, on the folks knowing that they can do this also. So that I would see going forward would be the big thing that basically the more events we have and the more things that are going to happen going forward are going to come from community people. One of the attended the RCRC conference, the annual meeting last week. Some very good presentations we had during that time, and some good ideas came out of it as well. We had a presentation on access to capital for rural communities. Goods movement, as Supervisor Hemmingson mentioned, which coincidentally, all the success stories, everyone's on I-5 or they're in a deep water port. So it's like, well, some of this stuff didn't apply to us. Or they had rail. So things that we're not, so we're obviously having to go different directions, but it was kind of interesting to see just the build out of goods movement being an impact on the community. And it also reiterates the importance of 199 for us. AB 109, they had Judge Brett Morgan out of San Joaquin County, Linda Penner, who's the Chief Probation Officer of Fresno County, and the Sheriff of Solano County, Gary Stanton. A couple, basically it's what's happening now is the big concern on realignment is where are the funds coming from, and I know those are issues that are beginning to be addressed, but one of the things they are starting to look at, and that was the consensus of the panel that talked to us, is that of looking at some type of especially on lower level offenders, how are we going to deal with these folks when they come back? And in the past, what we've done hasn't really worked, especially when you start running out of money. So a couple things that I know I thought it was interesting. The Superior Court Judge Morgan had basically said they now, when an offender comes in and they're a repeat offender, they do flash incarceration. So they immediately go to jail for 2 to 6 days. They don't get to get their car. They go right to jail. And he said the success rate was really high in terms of people not recommitting offenses going forward. So just some different ideas that did come out of that meeting. And then, obviously the cost of the county on public defenders and stuff came up. It's an ongoing cost for us. We had Matthew Rodriguez, Secretary of the Environmental Protection Agency, Cal EPA for California, and his was discussing current regulations and beginning to have a conversation with the local communities, because regulatory environments is pretty stiff, as you all know. So it was encouraging to have that conversation, to have him there actually with rural counties. So importance of communities banding together, and I think RCRC, the importance of this, 31 rural counties talking together, because we only represent, the 31 counties only represent 10% of the, or 8% of the entire population of California. So you start running numbers, the only way we really are going to have an impact and be heard is through these organizations. I think that kind of basically shot through for most of us on that. We also had a political commentary from both Republican consultant and Democratic consultant, and the thing I took away from it, and the other supervisor may have a different opinion, but the most successful is when there's a check and balance. It seems to have the most success going forward. That's basically what I took about it. When politics works well, you have a check and balance and you have some kind of middle ground. And that doesn't seem to be happening much in either capital at this point. So had a presentation on telemedicine, tribal fee to trust, and just two representatives. One was the Sam Cohen, who's the legal consultant for the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, and then Bruce Goldstein, who's the Sonoma County Council, talking about the partnerships that have had to happen for there to be successful fee to trust stuff set up. And then, as Supervisor Hemmingson said, we had a use and impact of social media, which was very interesting. And what we really found is the bigger community you got, the bigger the population. It was more important that you used Facebook as well as Twitter and all kinds of different things. We had a couple dinosaurs in the group that said, "Oh, I don't even have a computer." Basically, is what it came right for it. So, anyway, good presentation, definitely worthwhile. And a couple ideas that came out of there is we are going to be looking at some type of potential for a dog ordinance going forward. And there's lots of issues with people not controlling their dogs. If you have a dog, it is your responsibility. If you're not able to maintain the dog, then you shouldn't have the dog, or you should be paying to have the dog. So, more to come on that. And then I dealt with a lot of the SRA fees on the fire stuff, and we will have some information coming out in the paper later this week, basically dealing with, how to appeal it, and like Supervisor Finnegan said, another 90 days, you get hit with another bill. So it's always good to be part of California occasionally. So,
Supervisor Sullivan,
Yes.
if I could, I forgot in my reporting out, that's also the opportunity to give direction to staff. And I was privy to some correspondence that I think needs to be followed up on with County Council, CAO, Supervisor McClure as a member of the Coastal Commission, and whoever else, and elevate it to whatever height after you confer needs to be. And the correspondence was from Jim Baskin, I believe is the head lead staff person on the Coastal Commission. Basically, I read it as a veiled threat that he would slow down any project in the county until his personal project was dealt with, and he named the harbor and the airport. And those projects would be at risk if his project wasn't put back on the table.
I will
and
tell
dealt
you,
with.
that.
I need that looked into.
And we will, and I will tell you that coastal staff has removed Baskin from any county project for fear of a conflict of interest.
And-
That has already been done.
And this letter is addressing that, how that is going to result in slowdown or stoppage of anything the county wants until he doesn't have a
He
conflict.
penned this letter?
Yes.
yeah.
I would love to get a copy, because we actually took action to make sure that didn't happen.
Well, we're paying the price, I think.
Supervisor Sullivan?
Yeah,
I would just
Supervisor
like to add one more thing, too. I don't know how many of you've been told on that fire fee, when you pay it, write on your check, paid under protest. You would have more of a chance of getting paid back if it's successful in appealing.
Well, and as Supervisor Finnegan said, there's kind of inside track of people wanting to litigate it and stuff, but having said that, you still need to do your petition. If you do the petition, there's 3 different locations you send the petition to. Your chance of getting your funds back once it is overturned, because I think that's what's going to happen, will be quick. So you make sure you do that, and There'll be more information in the paper later this week, just telling you about the process, but it is there really isn't a just way that they're actually approving this fee. It's just a budget game and a money grab by the state. So, okay, so at this point, I am going to, since we're past the hour of public comment, I am going to go to, I do want to, do we have a member of the Essex family here? Oh, excellent, cool. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to open it for public comment. Members of the public may address the board on matters which are within the jurisdiction of the board. If you are addressing the board regarding a matter listed on the agenda, you may be asked to hold your comments until the board takes up that matter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less, and say your name into the mic so you can be identified. Mr. Miles.
I'm here for 2 reasons. There's something that's disturbing me, and I want to bring something to your attention. I read in Saturday's newspaper how Michelle Thomas of the Daily Triplicate and our food group people in October will have Del Norte County Food Month. As somebody that was raised on a small ranch in Idaho growing up, I'm aware of where food comes from. I would hope in October that my county would recognize some of our farmers and ranchers and some of the businesses and our fishermen that do produce the food that actually comes out of Del Norte County. I don't know how you would do that, but I think it's time they be recognized. There will be an event at the fairgrounds, and I would hope my county would recognize them. Then there's a larger issue that really I feel disappointed on. Recently, I had to go to social services on a completely different matter. But most of you aren't aware that people that are on our SNAP program or our Cow Fresh program live on $5 a day. I have a challenge for you people. How many of you could feed your families? Now I know it varies, but how many of you could feed a family on $5 a day? It averages out, I've been told, on Cow Fresh for one person, so you'd have to multiply this, of $34.34 a week for one person. So let's say you have a family of 5. Do the math. Recently, I talked to Debbie White. Debbie White and I agree on something. Most people that receive our Cow Fresh program from our social service department do not know how to budget, plan, or cook, or fix a meal with that $34.
Richard, could you wrap it up? You're at the end of
Okay,
your 3
and
minutes.
then one more thing. I am an unhappy camper about something at the Del Norte Airport. This year, I have flew out of here 5 times. I don't know about the rest of you who fly into San Francisco. I'm tired of the delays coming back to Crescent City because of the construction that's going on in San Francisco. The last 2 flights, I missed my flights. Can't you guys write the people on the Board of Supervisors for the city of San Francisco and get them to fix the signs so you don't have to run around in the San
Richard.
Francisco airport?
All right, Richard.
Richard, we've already done that, and our airport director's been in communication with United and everybody else to try to alleviate those issues.
Any other public comment?
Good morning. I'm Zach Arson, and I was asked at your last meeting to give a brief update and some background on the MPA monitoring enterprise. And so I prepared just concise description of what's going on.
Actually, Zach, we got you on the agenda.
Yeah, that's for a
oh,
different
okay.
item.
Okay,
Sorry
go
about that. So the MPA Monitoring Enterprise is a program of the nonprofit organization California Ocean Science Trust, whose organizational mission is to develop ocean condition assessments and evaluate the effectiveness of MPAs related to ecosystems. They work in collaboration with the Department of Fish and Game, the Ocean Protection Council, and Sea Grant, and provide decision makers, resource managers, tribal governments, and stakeholders, and the public with information about the performance of California's MPA network. They do not advocate for or against the implementation of MPAs. On June 6th of this year, the California Fish and Game Commission adopted the North Coast Regional MPA Network. That was the unified array. These MPAs are expected to go into effect in early 2013. The monitoring enterprise and the California Department of Fish and Game have started the MPA monitoring process in this region. The monitoring will be implemented in two stages: baseline monitoring first and long-term monitoring second. The North Coast MPA monitoring plan will guide both baseline and long-term monitoring, and it will be based on the MPA monitoring framework, which will be adapted as needed to reflect the unique aspects of our region. These regional monitoring plans are adopted by the California Fish and Game Commission and are included as appendices to the Marine Life Protection Act Master Plan, thereby establishing them as state policy. A little more detail, there are about 10 ecosystem features that they are looking at in these plans. This is from the South Coast region and the North Central Coast. I just received these in the mail yesterday, and there's an abstract of these plans and then the main document. And it's basically guidance information to steer what's going to be in the RFP, or what comes out of the RFP. So I'm going to leave these administration, and anybody's welcome to check them out. But what they're going to, examples of the features they're going to be studying are like rocky intertidal areas, the deep and shallow rocky bottoms and soft bottoms, kelp forests, estuaries and bays, and they will also be looking at consumptive and non-consumptive uses and seabirds and such. So I did speak with the Monitoring Enterprise this morning, and they said that this RFP would be out either at the end of October or early November. They're working on it now. So,
Zach, could you talk a little bit about the recipients so far of the, it's so troublesome to me because I'm witnessing that we know we want to study the same thing up and down the coast of nearshore, offshore, kelp, rocky bottom, soft bottom, and all of that. But I really want to somehow hit home to the monitoring people, to the resource secretary, that this monitoring is detailed science, but it's not a detailed science that can't be done by any, it's not a unique type of science that might belong to someone's intellectual authority of their own possession. It's actually science that has been adopted as a process. And again, my worry is that I'm going to see Scripps get a big chunk of money. I'm going to get to see the same players that have received these dollars, and it's not, each region, and there are 4 regions, each region is receiving $4 million. And so far I'm seeing the same organizations getting the RFPs because they were successful in the first RFP, so they score high on the second. And the other troubling part for me is that the science advisory team, which was put in place as part of the MLPA process, the science advisory team was set up to discuss what type of science is going to be needed and the level of participation that was going to be needed. Well, they're the recipients. And so I am extremely frustrated with this process because I'm seeing $4 million that could be coming to this region that is going to settle again in the South. So please.
Well, it is true that some of the same organizations and individuals did receive funding to monitor basically their discipline, whether that be Rocky Intertidal, birds, et cetera. I'm not sure how that trickles down if these organizations receive grants and hire local contractors, how that goes. But I know that's what you're working for. And Humboldt State, in my opinion, definitely has the ability and credentials to carry out these projects, as well as a lot of local folks in this county, Mendocino County and Humboldt. So I can't really speak to it further than that, Martha. So, Ms. McClure.
All right, thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, I will go ahead and close public comment. I am going to go back to the county administrator officer for his brief report.
Briefly, we have been working on the two primary projects that are capital projects, which are Point St. George trail improvement. Had a short meeting yesterday out at the site, and we're working on some of the issues that are involved in the environmental document. As the board knows, I continue to work on that one and have for quite some time, and we hope to get phase one done by the end of this year so we can look at phase two, which is actually implementing the project. The Battery Point project should be over by the end of this month, and as Supervisor Sullivan mentioned, we had a meeting with the outreach group from Smith River regarding recreation, which is one of the departments under administration. John Horner did the bulk of the work with the Baptist Church youth pastor, and we will be putting some part-time temporary employees out there once a week to open up and oversee the gymnasium for drop-in basketball for youth. At some point it could expand depending on the involvement of the kids in the area, and also some of the activities depending on what the need is. It is, as Supervisor Sullivan mentioned, it's kind of exciting that there was outreach to us, and it wasn't expected that the bulk of the activity would happen because of the county outreach to them. And once that happens, we can use the information they bring to us to actually tailor a program. In this case, it's a very straightforward and simple program of drop-in basketball. So it'll be very interesting to see how active they are and how successful it ends up being. The rest of the time has been focused on dealing with the budget.
Good. No, I think it's important that the program should be successful. Just, you know, you've got community involvement, but I think the folks need to understand any expansion of recreation activities in the community as a whole have got to come from the community. That's the resources at the county are shrinking. The county is the major organizer of recreational activities in the community. And so less funds here, it makes it harder for us as a county to do it, but it's always a possibility for the community to do it. So I want to encourage, with the success of the program that we hope we have out in Smith River, that across the county you have groups begin to step up. And in the past, it's how youth football's been that way, Little League baseball, the Little League soccer programs that are there. Those have all been community organized programs. So the county is there to help, but we're not in a position where we can necessarily take the lead on expanding recreation. So, but it is important to the community without a doubt. So, okay.
That's one man's opinion, by the way, as to the level of involvement this county has in recreation.
I might be short saying the amount, because a lot of the successful programs have been done by the community as a whole.
Yes,
so
I agree.
Yeah. So not to take away from the community activities on that. just to reiterate, any expansion of it, it's got to help with community involvement, so. Okay, I'm going to entertain a motion to take the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda, but pulling item number 8 because it's going to require some discussion.
And I'd also like to talk about 2 and 9, not necessarily need to be pulled, but if you're wanting to speed this up, we can pull them and bring them up later.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and pull we'll pull item
2,
2, 8, and 9. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the rest of the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve all items on the consent agenda minus 2, 8, and 9.
Yes.
Any public comment on the consent agenda? Okay, Tony, could you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor McClure.
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan.
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer.
Yes.
Chair Sullivan.
Yes. Okay, we have 2 proclamations. Part of the reason we did the consent agenda versus some of the timed items we have is we have groups wait for proclamations on that. So Supervisor McClure, if you could read number 3, it's approve and authorize the chair to sign proclamation declaring October 2012 Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Supervisor McClure.
It would be an honor to read this proclamation for the people who do the incredible good work that goes on in our community. Del Norte County Board of Supervisors proclamation Domestic Awareness Month, October 2012. Whereas domestic violence, once a secret kept among families, is now recognized as a serious crime in our community. And whereas domestic violence has severe consequences for survivors, their children, and families, and the impacts on the quality of life for the entire community. And whereas stopping the cycle of this crime requires not only resolve, but the courage of the survivors, but also the support and involvement from us all. And whereas enhanced education, prevention, and intervention help increase public awareness to the severity and extent of domestic violence. And whereas violence in the home is a problem that affects every socioeconomic level in our society, occurring in wealthy and disadvantaged neighborhoods, and involving the employed and the unemployed. And whereas domestic violence is generally learned and passed down from one generation to another, and whereas our society pays a high price for domestic violence through homelessness, increased crime rate, drug and alcohol abuse, increased medical expenses, and business losses. And whereas during the month of October, local, state, and national domestic violence agencies will sponsor events to help us focus public attention on the problem of domestic violence. Now therefore be it resolved that Del Norte County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaim the month of October 2012 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We encourage all residents to dedicate themselves to learning about reducing domestic violence and the violence against women in Del Norte County. We further encourage all citizens in our community to support Rural Human Services, Harrington House domestic violence programs, and other domestic violence programs in our community. Passed this day, the 25th of September, by unanimous vote, 2012. Thank you.
Ladies, if you'd like to speak, we have an actual proclamation, we just don't have it with us here.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it will be to you shortly, yes, yeah.
No problem.
The happy, fun framed one you'll
Yeah.
get.
Good. I would like to just take a moment to introduce, of course, you know, Jody Hoon, who is our director for Harrington House now, and Sheila, who is our shelter manager, and she's going to hand out some invitations for our Cookies for Cop events. And I'd like to say thank you for all the support you've touches my heart, all these years that you've given Harrington. Thank you.
Terry, I think it is noticed, I'm sure all of you know this, but Terry recently won a Lifetime Achievement with the Karen Cooper Award.
Yes, I did.
So congratulations,
Thank
and
you.
I know you definitely deserve it with all your hard work you've put in all these years, so congratulations.
Thanks for the community. We wouldn't have what we have without the support we've given, so thank you. Thanks.
Jody?
It's quite an honor. So, on behalf of Harrington House, I would like to thank the Del Norte Board of Supervisors for supporting more awareness about domestic violence in our community. 31 years ago, the only domestic violence service in Del Norte County was a simple hotline service ran through Real Human Services by dedicated volunteers. Thanks to our community and many dedicated individuals, our current Harrington House was created, and I am going to acknowledge one such dedicated person for 26 years of domestic violence service in the field, and she's a founder of Harrington House, so that's Terry McCune-Ostra. And thanks to people like her, we can have a domestic violence resource center with comprehensive domestic violence services and an emergency shelter in our town. Last year, Harrington House provided victims of domestic violence and their children with 2,708 shelter nights, 8,115 meals, 5,471 individual and group counseling sessions, over 100 domestic violence prevention presentations in classrooms, providing service for over 1,010 victims of domestic violence. So all across the nation, October is recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. During this time, Harrington House ties purple ribbons around town and coordinates with local businesses who hang purple bears in their windows, all in hopes of bringing awareness to domestic violence. Harrington House and community members like you can help support men, women, and children who experience domestic violence, as well as bring awareness and prevention so that together, someday, we can end domestic violence in our community. So thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Okay, thank you. We also have another, actually a resolution of appreciation, and I'm going to go ahead and read that if we have a member of the Essex family. The Board of Supervisors of the County of Del Norte, State of California, resolution of appreciation for Richard Essex. Whereas early in his life, Richard Essex resided in Del Norte County, and whereas Richard Essex joined the military the day after high school graduation in 2008 and was later transferred to Hawaii in hopes of becoming a helicopter gunner, and whereas in the September of 2011, Richard Essex left for Afghanistan as a helicopter gunner and was due home November of 2012, and whereas in August of 2012, soldier Richard Essex was on the Black Hawk helicopter that was shot down in southern Afghanistan, killing 11 individuals, including soldier Essex. And whereas Richard Essex played a key role in the protection of our country, and that our freedom is because of men like Richard Essex, and now therefore be it resolved that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors honors the life of Richard Essex for his commitment to his country, and that the death of our esteemed friend Richard Essex is a source of sorrow to us, and that when we adjourn today, we do so out of respect in his memory. Now, therefore, be it further resolved that the Del Norte County Board of Supervisors expresses its appreciation to soldier Richard Essex for his service and dedication to our country, and that we give to his sorrowing family our deepest sympathy in their bereavement. Passed and adopted today. Yeah, if you could please speak.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you. My husband couldn't be here. We've had to take off almost a month worth of work to be everywhere. We've been in Dover and all over California, and I'd just like to say thank you. And for all of you guys, every one of you that sits in this room, you're all free to think what you want and support domestic violence, which I totally support, to support law enforcement, to wear the clothes that we want to wear for people that defend our country. So please remember everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. It's always a sharp reminder when you lose somebody that puts down their life for our country and our way of life, and we definitely wanted to show our appreciation and gratitude. And I know there was an article in the paper a few weeks ago, but I think it's important we remember this on a regular basis. So, all right. Okay, so we are going to take up, I think we were going to move the Board of Equalization hearing up.
I believe it's actually was notified to the participants of 10:35.
Okay, so we're running behind on schedule, so let's go ahead and let's go to item 27 in the agenda. And I am going to, we'll adjourn as the Board of Supervisors, reconvene as the Board of Equalization, and conduct a public hearing for the change of assessment parcel number 101-021-20A, 2011-12, Antil. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you need to swear him in. So we are opening the public hearing now.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter, now pending before this board, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay.
Okay, my name's Steve Hart, and I'm with the Delaware County Assessor's Office. Okay, the subject is a 3,416 square foot house with a 952 square foot detached garage. The garage has a 224 square foot office. It is situated on approximately 5.5 acres with an ocean view. The house was completed in December of 2010. The cost approach was utilized to value the improvements. Historic costs were deemed the most appropriate. The cost of the project was submitted by applicant, and the numbers supplied were used in the appraisal of the improvements. The factored base on the land was more than market, so it was reduced. A 6-acre land sale dated 1/4/11 was used in the appraisal of the land. The total assessment for the 11-12 roll is $914,000. And the applicant supplied me a copy of the appraisal that he had doing for a refinance, and I looked at it, and I had enough questions with it that led me to believe that using the cost approach and historic costs that he supplied was a more accurate reflection of the market value. And if you look on a couple pages, I had put some stuff in here. It talks about the cost approach. And the one thing, the cost approach is most reliable when the property being appraised is relatively new, so it is a brand-new house. So I felt that this was an accurate reflection, plus, we can use the state-supplied cost, or what I deem more appropriate was the local cost supplied by the applicant. And that is it. It's pretty straightforward. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, why, who's appealing? The applicant's appealing?
Um,
No, you got me a little mind boggled here, because obviously with Board of Equalization, we don't get the information beforehand, number one.
Okay, there was a...
Number two, you're saying it's based on the information the applicant gave you, and if you based it on his information rather than on something you developed, why is there an appeal in your mind?
Okay, we'll let the applicant speak to that, but there was an appraisal done, and the value was widely divergent from what I came up with.
Okay.
So it was enough that it led the applicant to believe something needed to be rectified.
Okay, so there was an actual appraisal done as opposed to your cost analysis?
Yes.
And that was a fee appraisal, not just an estimate from a realtor.
It was a fee appraisal.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from supervisors?
Well, so when do we get that information?
Okay, the applicant can speak, so you can ask questions, and if he does not have a copy of the appraisal, I do have one.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Okay, at this point, we'll hear from the applicant.
Okay.
You can state your name for the record. And also, you need to get sworn in also as well.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give in this matter, now pending before this board, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I have a number of things to submit.
If you could state your name for the record also.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jeff Ontil,
Okay.
owner of the property. I have two appraisals to submit. They're over 30 pages apiece, so I only printed one copy. I don't know who to give these to.
Well, I guess we can pass them down.
So as Mr. Hart said, the assessed value was $914,000. I got his letter on March the 9th, 2011. On March the 25th, I had the property appraised for refinance. The appraisal value at that point was $555,000. I had another appraisal done on October 14th of 2011, sorry. And the valuation on that was $542,000. And I'm requesting that the Board of Equalization reduce the assessment for the tax year 2011-2012 to $542,000 to reflect the lower value. In addition to the two appraisals that I've submitted, there's also a sales comparison of sales that took place between January 2010 and March of 2012 that show that the $542,000 appraisal is supported by those sales. There's not one sale of any of these Ocean View homes that exceeds $460,000.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, I don't think so.
Any questions from board members?
Who did the appraisals?
A company by the name of Accurate Appraisals here in town.
He did both of them?
Yes. Yeah, don't get to choose the appraiser, so it just went that direction both times.
Familiar with that. So I guess, do you think that there should be any value or any consideration, as in any appraisal, to construction costs or replacement costs or as-built costs, as opposed to comparable sales in a down market?
Well, I did submit the cost to the assessor when we got our occupancy permit. Those costs were incurred over a period of almost 5 years while we were developing the property, and they totaled up to that amount. While we were doing the development, of course, property values were tanking in the county and just about everywhere else in the country. So by the time we finished the project, it wasn't worth anywhere near what we paid for it.
Well, what do you think it would cost to build your 900 square foot garage with a shop in it?
Probably about $70,000, which is what we paid to have it built.
And per square footage, with granite countertops, rocks, double car garage, 2-story, nice hardy plank, what do you think per square foot that would cost to build?
We spent in the neighborhood of $680,000
But per square foot? what do
per
you
square
think?
foot.
If you had a contractor build it, what do you think he's going to tell you? $2 a square foot, $200 a square foot, $150 a square foot?
I think it was around $150 a square foot, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a 3,100 square foot house?
Yes.
Leslie, do you have that?
I don't have the appraisals, but in your relevant sales comparison, it appears that most of these, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I can see, that I have available to me, that they are all on about 6,000 square foot lots as opposed to 5 acres.
That's true. There just haven't been any sales of anything comparable to this particular property, so I had to go with what we had.
Right,
Which is
but,
those
and
number
yours
ones.
is 6 acres or 5?
5.5.
5.5. Somehow that there must have been some sales. The assessor didn't look at just 5.5 acre sales of what that's going for, what 5.5 acres are going for right now.
You mean the appraiser?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly sure how many, well, actually, I think one of the comps in one of the appraisals was higher acreage, but he makes adjustments for that in there. I'm not an appraiser, so I don't understand the method that he used very well.
I'm just looking at these, and none of these have acreage.
No, none of them do. There's very few sales like our
But
property.
did he look, I'm asking, I don't have the documentation, but.
He's got one property in Brookings that,
No,
of 5.5 acres.
just 5.5 acres. Did he look at any acreage sale, per acre sale in Delaware County? What's ocean acreage, Ocean View acreage going for in Delaware County?
I don't know whether he looked for those or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I was looking at your relevant sales comparisons. I sort of do this for a living too, and one there's a manufactured house, a couple others of distress. I mean, there's just no comparison to what, I haven't been in your house, but just from the description and the picture and the location, there would have to be severe adjustments up for the quality of your construction, for the size of your lot, for the newness, on and on and on and on. I guess I would have to take a calculator and do stuff like that, but I'm not sure that's reasonable that I
Well, that's...
be an appraiser for you either.
Right, and I submitted the two appraisals because he's a professional that's supposed to make those calculations, and the only reason I submitted the comps is basically because I think they support the appraisals.
Do we have any other board questions? Just a second. Yeah.
Yes, he came up with these comps, or did you come up with these comps?
No, the appraiser does that.
The appraiser did
Yes.
that.
I guess my last question is, did you try to negotiate with the assessor's office?
I spoke with Steve over the phone when we got the first appraisal, and then I sent him a copy by email. We spoke on the phone later that morning, and Steve declined to lower the assessed value and suggested that I file an appeal.
Wait, the comps in the appraisal are different than the comps in your synopsis,
Yes, ma'am.
because they are considerably higher in price than what you were presenting, where you had made a statement that none of these had reached over 470 or something.
Well, I had a friend of mine search multiple listings for sales in Delaware County for 2010, 11, and 12, and those are the ones that we got back.
But I have comps from your appraiser that were comping properties of $799,000 with 3 acres and an ocean view, or $625,000 with just a .2 acre view. So I'm seeing comps in here that have some land with them at least, but then have a considerably higher price than what you're presenting with these other comps. So now I am confused as to why we're getting 2 sets of comps.
Well, I'd even question more is how you can have an appraisal of 550 when you have comparables of 700
Yeah, you can
of
look
sales.
I don't know.
So the comps in the appraisals were selected by the appraiser. I
Right,
think
well,
those were
that's-
sales that were within a year prior to the appraisal. They didn't come up in the MLS search that I had asked to do, so I didn't have those in my list of comps. My intention was to update the comps with sales during that taxing period to find out where they were in relation to the appraisals.
I guess my issue is not with the comps you came up with. Without having to read this whole appraisal, when he's got comparables of 799, 625, and of course a 525, there's a couple of ridiculous ones here I'm not even going to mention, and a 679, how in the world that have less land or less square footage, how in the world does an appraiser then discount his own appraisal of his own comparable sales down another $200,000, $250,000? I mean, and he's got I guess these are up in Brookings, but 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, 4,500 square feet on a quarter acre. 4-bedroom, 3 bath, 2,900 square feet, 3.6 acres, fairly comparable. 799,000. That's only about 0.8 of a mile away from your home. I'd give serious weight to that. And there's one of 3,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath, which is smaller, but somewhat as yours, on .2, so less than a quarter of an acre. It's only 5 years old, for $625, And that 625 needs to be adjusted up for land and whatnot. I mean, just scanning this, I have no idea how your appraiser discounted
Again, I'm
those
not an
good
expert.
comps down, it's not your fault, down to 550.
Well, he does go through an analysis that shows adjustments for walkout basements, adjustments for quality of the construction, all sorts of adjustments that he makes to arrive at that figure.
Well, and then again, appraisers, when they're appraising for a lender, have been taught over the years to appraise for what the resale would be should the lender have to take it back and resell it in a reasonable period of time rather than actual value. I mean, I've run into this before when we were building homes, and it cost more to build the house, just materials, than the bank was willing to loan on it. And that was the explanation they gave us. Well, we don't care what it's worth what it's worth to us. And so sometimes an appraiser's going to value it less if it was for a loan or just to establish value.
It was for a refinance in both cases.
That, I guess that rests my case.
Yeah.
They're
That
going
answers
to
the question.
severely underscore you.
Yeah.
But I appreciate some of those comps that show that you have a lot of good value in your home.
And any other questions from board members? All right, thank you. Stan?
Yeah, looking through the appraisal, one thing that clued me in the first off, one of the narratives, it says that the adjustments are deviating from the standard. So that, that sometimes that happens in the market the way it is, but then I looked at that, and then the appraisal goes on to say cost supports the sales comparison, and then if you look at the costs that are derived from Marshall and Swift, my experience with the Marshall and Swift guidebook says all through the book local costs are deemed more accurate. So you always want to use local costs that are derived instead of the cost factor. So to me the appraisal was kind of contradicting the cost factors. It says it works out with it, and then if local costs are a more accurate reflection, how do we get from 600,000 on local costs to a total package of 552? And then there was other things in the appraisal, like the narrative says the basement on the subject house is 100% finished, but then they go ahead and then treat it as only 50%. They give it a wild adjustment, and they say it's finished and done, but let's adjust it down. And then even like in the detached garage, the kitchenette, there's certain things they just, all through it, it was, everything was diluted, watered down, and it was just, to me, it just clued me. It was just not accurate enough. So I went with the local costs. And then, looking at the land value too, we did have a sale in the neighborhood in Spyglass on 1411, 6 acres, $275,000. So then you have development costs, and then there is some value to developing it. Once you sell the place, it sells for more than the cost of the development plus the purchase of the land. So I went ahead and used the full $275,000 when I was comparing, even though it's 6.5 acres, so it is a little bigger than the subject. So you look at the historic costs or local costs plus the land sale there, it sums it up pretty good.
Okay, any questions? Nope. Okay.
No, I guess as part of this process, is there multiple answers we can come up with? In other words, rather than saying agreeing with him or agreeing with you, can we say that we think that, where's the variance? Can it be 850 rather than 914 or something like that, or rather than 555? Do we have that leeway?
Yes. But one thing, really looking at, if you're going to base it on the appraisal, really looking at, you read the appraisal, it's just, it'll say in the appraisal there's no comparables of a new house. However, one of the comparables has the same effective age. So how can it have the same effective age if it's not new? So it's,
because if it's 5 years old and it's in perfect condition, has the same attributes and somebody took care of it, you could have the same effective age.
is possible. If, I think with a lot of pest reports and a good inspection, we don't know if that has been done, but,
No, I guess I was asking, so if, even if, and I haven't been in the house, so I'd be at a severe disadvantage, but if I'm going $150 a square foot for what he's got, you know, and it costs $525,000, probably, I think, line, and then the land, if it was 2.25, which is down from your comp at 250, and building that other structure, you know, 75 or 80, which would probably cost more to do that, and then all your improvements that aren't talked about, driveways and et cetera, et cetera. It's very easy to get to 850. So that's, I was wondering if there was leeway.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Okay, any public comment on this matter? Okay, seeing no public comment, I am going to bring it back to the board, and I will entertain a motion. Or maybe I won't.
Well, I agree with Supervisor Finnegan. I was in real estate years ago for 17 years, and we used to do, we couldn't call them appraisals because we were not licensed appraisers, but we would do an estimate of value. And I could see where this could be adjusted down a little bit from what we've come up with, but nowhere near, sir, wherever you sat down, nowhere near as low as what the owners come up with.
So my understanding of the process, if there's no action, then everything stays the same. That's where we are.
That would be correct.
Okay. Seeing no motion, we will go ahead. There's no action taken by the board, and we'll close public hearing on this matter. So basically, the appeal's essentially denied because there's no action taken by the board. So, all right. All right, so we are adjourning as the Board of Equalization, and we'll reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. We are going to go to our timed item, which was at 10:35, Building Inspection Division Activities Presentation requested by Deputy Director of Community Development. Item 20 on the agenda. Good morning. Is his mic on? Go ahead.
Is it working? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start over. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Thompson. I'm your county building inspector and county building official. I've been asked to update the board as well as the public on some of the activities of the Building Inspection Division. The Building Inspection Division consists of 2 inspectors, myself and Jeff Mitchell, and Linda Wagnon, whose full-time position is allocated at half-time to building clerical duties. What I'd like to do is provide you quickly an overview of some of the recent permit activities. The community and some of the contractors right now believe that since the economy is real slow, that it's real slow in our office, and that's not the case. As of August 1st, 2011, we've currently issued 472 building permits. These permits consist of new residents, commercial buildings, a lot of re-roofs, electrical, plumbing, a lot of smaller permits also. During this same time period, we've also issued 180 building permits for the city. We haven't issued them, excuse me, we've processed them. We currently do building inspection and plan check for the city. I believe there's about a half dozen of those 180 that are still in our office as far as plan check goes. So even though the permit numbers are down right now, the permit numbers are up fairly steady, the large commercial projects and new residences that we rely on a lot as far as revenue goes are down. They're not where they should be, I think, but the majority of the permits that we take in do require some sort of a plan review, which takes time. Currently, right now, for a new house or a large commercial project, we're estimating the plan check to be within 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it takes a little longer, sometimes it doesn't take nearly that long, depending on how well the applicant has done his job as submitting information to us. Some of the obstacles that we face when doing plan check is, the biggie that I kind of hinted on there is people submitting projects incomplete. Many times people are under the influence that if you just submit something that it gets the ball going. And in fact, it slows the whole process down and makes the staff have to fill in the blanks, or so to say, as far as what the applicant is looking for. A lot of other times the applicants change the plans in the middle of the process, and we have to stop what we're doing and basically start all over again and do another plan check. A lot of times there's changes out into the field that are either done with our notification or without our notification. If it's done without our notification, a lot of times we have to get a third party as far as a civil engineer, an architect, or a California licensed design professional involved. That takes a little bit of time. But we are working right now. We have in the last year or two worked on streamlining the permit process. We try to triage the permits as they come in. The ladies at the counter kind of prioritize. As far as some permits are fairly small, we can, look at them real quick and get them out of there as soon as we can, rather than let those sit while we're checking one set of plans for a few weeks. So we're working on that, and we continue to issue a lot of smaller remodel permits, electrical permits, plumbing, stuff like that we can issue over the counter. And most of the ladies up front have all been cross-trained, and they're fairly good at issuing those kind of permits. So that helps out a lot, that we don't have to go up there. Building inspection. It's kind of a biggie for me, because for over 20 years I was on the other side of that counter, and I take it pretty personal. I know how much an inspection, how much time it can cost. You've got 5 guys on a job site right now waiting for the inspector to get there. It can cost you a lot of money so we prioritize. We try to get out there as soon as we can, but sometimes it takes a while. We come on a first serve. You call in, you get on the board. We can't give times because some inspections take 5 minutes, some take 2 hours. So it's really hard if you give somebody a time and then you don't make it, and then they're pretty upset. But Del Norte County right now, it's a small populated area, but we have a lot of miles to travel. I've traveled as much as 140 miles in one day doing building inspections. So, I mean, we've got building permits in the city. We've got them in Klamath. We've got them in Big Flat. We've got them as far north as the border, up 199. I've got a house going up there right now. But that, and along with some of the administration duties of myself and the staff, it can take a lot of times. We have a lot of permits that are existing right now. We have almost 615 permits that are existing permits that date back to the 1980s. I mean, we're doing inspections on permits that are almost 30 years old. We've taken efforts to streamline that in the last year or two to not allow as many extensions as we have in the past.
So the reason for the 30 years is they've been extended and extended and extended.
In the past, and it was common policy, if somebody asked for an extension, you just gave it to them. The building code actually calls out that you have to have one inspection every 6 months and show progress. It's not that hard, but some of these out, there's 2 of them that were that close to where they needed to be torn down. And recently, one of the homeowners has kicked it into gear, and their sons came up, and they've really done a tremendous job on it, and they're cleaning it up. The other one is being suspended as we speak, the 2 that are that old. And we have anywhere in between there. Okay. So we've kind of cut down on it. The building code allows me as the building official to grant extensions. I'm requiring all extensions to be in writing and show cause for it. I make exceptions. Sometimes there's just things that come up there where they need an extension, and I have no problem doing that. But just the, calling in saying, I just want to keep it alive, and, we need to show some progress and get these projects done, because right now we're spending money on fuel for permits that are, like I said, 27 years old. So we're working on cutting that down. But we've, as of August 1st, 2011, we've taken in, I don't know if I went over that, the 472 building permits, the 180 from the city. That leaves about 529 permits. The existing permits that we have out there, so we're over 1,300 permits. Hopefully they're not all going to call for an inspection the same day, because we're with 2 guys, we're pretty well strapped with building inspection and plan check. We work a lot of hours trying to keep up with that and keep the contractors and homeowners happy. Some of my personal things, I receive 8 to 9 phone calls a day or voicemail messages, a lot of computer email back and forth with the public, with contractors, with engineers, and with the state. The state's ever-changing building codes. I don't have to tell you guys about the fire codes. I think you're aware of how they've implemented that. We have new green building codes. They also have, I don't want to say hindered, but they've altered the building permit process a little bit. A lot of our time is spent also dealing with tenant-landlord disputes. A lot of code enforcement stuff kind of comes my way. I kind of work with Dave Mason. He helps me. We help him. Feuding neighbors. A lot of time is neighbors turn each other in, fighting over a fence, or somebody's doing construction without a building permit. Illegal construction's another one. I got a lot of illegal construction. A lot of contractors, a lot of builders, homeowners have gone underground, bypassing the building permit process. When they get caught, it spends a lot of staff time as far as doing research and trying to find a remedy for the construction. We also spend a little bit of time investigating, we're going on investigations with the felony investigation unit on grow houses. A lot of times they'll call us when they go in there and see a lot of electrical. I've seen some pretty horrendous electrical things with little kids crawling around open wires and really, really bad stuff. So when I get a grow house that's in that kind of manner, I'm requiring a licensed electrician to go through there before we usually pull the power, and I'm requiring them to sign off on that house before we'll give them back their power, because it's pretty scary. There's a house across the street from us right now that was one of the worst I've ever seen. And they had 3 little kids, and they said, well, the little kids aren't allowed to play downstairs where their grow house was. But I guess if the house down below catches on fire, the kids upstairs were okay. But it wasn't a lot of logic put into that thought. But, these are just some of the issues that we kind of wanted to let you know that, the building, Jade asked us to let you know that, we are busy. Like I said, a lot of contractors, a lot of the public are under the impression that there's not a lot going on, so we must be, not doing a whole lot. But we are putting in a lot of hours, tons of hours, and a lot of effort into making it easier for the public and contractors to do their work. If you have any questions, I'll certainly answer that.
Yeah, Supervisor McClure.
If you come across a meth house, are you requiring it to go down to the studs with hazmat coming in, or?
I haven't had to deal with a meth house yet. Most of them are marijuana grows. It possibly could be that would be more of a health department issue, and we would work with them also if they dealt that it was that was the only remedy for it, then we would probably have to do that. I see on TV a lot that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Even some of the grow houses with the mold, and they're having to remedy that through very much like you would asbestos. Hazmat crews come in. They have to have special certifications, and they have to take special means to get rid of it all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Hamilton?
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned that you don't give the contractor a time. What do you give them? Do you give them a range?
We do. We have an AM inspection and a PM inspection.
Okay.
And I shouldn't say we don't give times, because we can get you usually through radios.
It's not the cable company. It's not like the cable company.
I don't know
where
how.
you show up, no, you just show up whenever. I'll be there sometime today.
Well, no,
No, it kind of, sometimes it could be like that. It's, you know, and a lot of contractors are used to dealing with that, but,
I mean, so if you know that you have a busy schedule and you know that you can't get to them on a certain day?
yeah, we try and notify somebody if, and I've had times where, you know, I'm running real late and I'll call in to Linda with radios and telephones, and I don't give out my cell phone to contractors because they'll be calling me in Christmas morning or something, and I have had that happen. We're pretty good, and Jeff and I both, inspections are real important to me, like I said. I've seen what happens when you got 5 employees sitting out on a job site, you know, sitting on their beds of their truck waiting for us to get there. It costs a lot of money, and
Well, that's why I was curious. You said you weren't giving out a time, and I was just wondering.
No, we never have. And
what you do give out.
I give out a kind of a,
Like
I can get you in the
range.
ballpark.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of times we're right on. The one thing we do with the electrical permits is the contractor will call us and tell him he's going to be ready about 1 o'clock, and you know, whatever time. We try and be there because it's very important we get the power turned on, because a lot of times the power companies are working, you know, they're at all ends of the county also, and we don't want anybody being without power overnight if we can help it.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from Supervisor? Good job.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dave. Okay, we're going to go on to the next timed item that was supposed to occur at 10:45. Smith River Sonar Fish Counting Program funding update as requested by Zach Larson Associates. Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach Larson, the contractor for the Del Norte County program, Smith River Ditson Pilot Study. It was a 2-year program funded by the Department of Fish and Game, Fisheries Restoration Grants Program, and the Steelhead Card. Proud to say that we had a successful implementation of the 2-year study, but unfortunately, it's going to come to an end this season. We were, I don't want to say promised, but we were told that we were going to get funded a 3rd year last year. And during that time frame, we missed an important deadline to get funding for this season. And as that fell through, we were asked again for another proposal to maintain the program for this season. And they said that they had 60% of the funding available to us. And I was just told 2 weeks ago that that reverted back to the state. I had some email exchanges that I'd like to share with you. And one of my disappointments with the process or with the administrators of the department is that they're communicating with me. I'm the subcontractor, and they should be communicating with the county. And so, but, and not only are we losing some really good data for the Smith River, it's actually, this technology is being used in Alaska, several rivers. It's the best thing they have going in terms of managing their runs, and it could function very well here in California, and that was the whole purpose of our study. And not only do we lose that data for the Smith River with the newly opened ocean commercial and recreational fisheries and what effect that might have on the Smith, but also the Klamath was projected to have one of the biggest runs it's seen in a long time. And so it's going to be a shame to lose that information, and then also we lose about 4 or 5 jobs because of it. So we are currently trying to find funding through some foundations and people that are interested in seeing this thing continue, but the program starts October 1st. There's already salmon in the river. They haven't necessarily made it past our sonar site, which is at River Mile 6, but it would be very good, I think, for us and our community and the river to have that program go this season. So I just wanted to provide you this update and let you and fishermen and the public know that we're not going to be down there. we do have quite a good system set up, and it's been deemed one of the best sonar stations that department employees has seen, so, thank you.
What's the total amount
The total amount,
that we would need? The total amount of dollars that we would
well,
need.
it depends on what you want to do. What we had done is from October 1st to April 15th was our timeline, approximately 7 months. It was about $135,000 for the whole program. And that includes some of the equipment costs. I mean, it's, you know, we have computers and routers and mounting equipment and batteries that fail. And so there are some operating expenses included in that. But you have a copy of those proposals, and we do have a proposal that's in place, not in place, but has been submitted to this year's program funding, which would not take effect until next fall, and that's a 3-year program. But this gap in data is what we're missing, so, and that's what we're
And is
unhappy
there,
about.
if you can't get in the water by October 1, is there another time, like if we found partial?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to capture those first, that first rain. Last year, we had 6,000 fish come up in the first 2 weeks, and, you know, you never know what you miss once that river comes up. And so, yes. But we're actively seeking funds, but we don't have much time to spare. So. But here's an interesting article I brought down from the Kenai River in Alaska that talks about their successes with the sonar program and how they're changing their whole management scenario based on it. So.
Any questions for, any other questions?
Chairman, I would like to note, you know, Zach had mentioned the program costs. There was a considerable amount of funding that was brought forward for the equipment, and it's not being lost, but those units are sitting in a Fish and Game office somewhere at this point. We did have some conversations. Zach mentioned the communication issues. One of the bigger issues was the Fish and Game changed their philosophy on how they would have somebody administer the program, primarily funding. And they had indicated, they just basically dropped the administrative portion of the funding so that the county would not get paid for the activity that the auditor controller or our office would be involved in. And it's something we did have a conversation about at one time, but they were just adamant that they were going to, they basically wanted it done for free. And if it, you know, my opinion was, you know, Fish and Game was very supportive of this project, and probably still are, but didn't make an effort to even attempt to offset the cost of the county at that point. They basically wanted to sign us to sign a contract that was retro and lost about, well, I guess it'd be about $20,000 to $25,000, which is not something that we can afford to do. At the same time, you know, they're in support of this program, but they're not putting a lot of effort out. It was disappointing.
Right. Sounds like it's true for Sacramento across the board.
We are appreciative of the county, or of the county, of course, for implementing the program, but also the grants program for funding the project in the first place. But there were some not necessarily promises, but you know, we were told that we were going to be operating this season, and they took that all away. So anyway.
All right. Thanks, Zach.
All right. Anything you could do would be great.
Okay. Okay, we are moving on to item 22 in the agenda, and we are going to, it was an 11 o'clock item, which we're passed. Conclude the public hearing and adopt the recommended 2012-2013 fiscal year final budget, special districts budget by resolution as presented over the course of the budget hearings. We're going to, 1, adopt the resolution 2012-024, a resolution fixing tax rates for fiscal year 2012-13 as required by government code. 2, adopt a resolution 2012-025, setting the appropriation limits for fiscal year 2012-13. 3, approve a side letter to agreement between the County of Del Norte and the Sheriff's Employees Association establishing employee contribution rates to the Public Employees Retirement System effective January 1st, 2013 through June 30th, 2013 as fully described in the attached side letter. Number 4, reestablish the following positions: 2 deputy sheriffs, 2 correctional technicians, and 1 correctional officer effective September 25th, 2012 as requested by the County Administrative Officer. Jay.
That is the recommendation for the board action today. This is the final step in the annual budget process that started effectively with mid-years in January, February. It started in earnest with the new budget in April. As the board will recall at our last meeting, there was one primary issue, and the board had taken action to eliminate some positions. Since that time, we have had meetings with the Sheriff Employees Association, the sheriff, chief probation officer, the district attorney, in an attempt to find solutions to reestablish those positions. And I'm happy to say today that a number of people did come to the table and stepped up, and we were able to come forward with a balanced budget that did save those positions. In particular, the Sheriff Employees Association did agree to some concessions for the 6 months starting January 1, and that was a considerable portion of the outstanding funding. We were fortunate earlier in the year, the sheriff had done some outreach in Tehama and Shasta County, had some need for some beds. So they'll be renting bed space down at the jail, which was a very large portion of the deficit. In addition, we had met with the chief probation officer regarding AB 109 funding, which, as we discussed previously, primarily benefits probation because of the new change, the realignment. However, there were a couple of placements for fire camp that were in there that don't appear to be able to be done this year, which means they'll be incarcerated and that money could be shuffled over to the jail. There was also a small increase in 443 revenue that the jail typically gets, which also assisted. The general fund will also pick up a portion of the additional costs. Our original budget instructions for all of the departments was to maintain net county costs. Now that's a great goal to have, but we know that there are personnel costs, there are other costs that rise annually. But that is the attempt of all of the budgets. And a number of our general fund budgets did come within that number. And I say the general fund because that is the issue we typically are dealing with, is the general fund. They did either came within because of revenue changes or cuts in expenditures. The situation that we face is going to continue to be tenuous. The issue at the jail with realignment, although assisted considerably with the renting of bed space, once that bed space isn't needed, we'll be back on our table and we'll need to deal with these proactively. One of the things I did leave out in regards to coming up with additional revenue was the 11470.2 of the Penal Code allows the district attorney to actually negotiate a charge for the eradication of marijuana. And the sheriff had come forward with that plan, had met with the district attorney, and they had come up with a commitment to pursue that. And so there is a very conservative number written into this budget for that. My understanding is that is beginning immediately. And I'd like to thank the sheriff for coming forward with that and meeting with the DA and coming up with that plan. So at this point, the primary issues for this year's fiscal year have been dealt with. We are presenting you with a balanced budget today. I want to thank the budget team. We've been working on this for a lot of months now, and all of the department heads and all of the staff that have been involved in this, because we've had changes right up to the last minute that require staff to go back and change their budgets. And it may sound easy that you go change a number here or there, but it really isn't. It's a lot more complicated than that, and we have asked them to do that more than once in the last few months. So, this is extremely important to everybody because, you know, in the case of this one, this is the services that the board provides or authorized to be provided to the community at large. And we've been able to maintain the service level at least to the policies and goals of the board in this case with the results-based budgeting. Again, you know, the budget team that we work together from April through the end, that includes the auditor, controller, the assistant county administrative officer, and our personnel manager. And there was you know, the auditor controller took on a couple of budgets this year above and beyond what he normally would in order to make sure those came together, and I really appreciate that. And then the involvement of Neil Lopez and Joey Young, invaluable in trying to get to this point. It takes a real team effort, and it isn't just that team, but furthermore, you know, the employees on both sides, SEA and SEIU, elected officials, appointed department heads, all have taken concessions over the last 2 years, and then again this year with SEA, and it's very much appreciated. So before you today are the recommendations, and if there are any questions, myself, and I'm not going to look back this time, but because I know all three of them are back there this time, but the budget team's
Are
here
they?
too.
Okay. Any questions from board members?
One question on the RDA. There's still $1 million that's being scraped off the top before the tax allocation. Is this an annual allocation? Is it going to continue? What's going on here?
I think the auditor controller should come to the mic on that one.
So what's your question?
There is $1 million between RDA 1 and RDA 2 that are being scraped off the top before the tax allocation.
Correct.
Annual allocation, when's it going to stop?
That'll stop when the RDAs are paid in full, which a projection I believe was 2032 or 2033. That's scraped off the top, put on the side, and then it's allocated to the approved expenditures from the former RDAs. Anything not spent there is dispersed to the taxing entities. So we do see some of that coming back into the county as well as the city and the harbor and the school district.
Okay, because
We do show that as a separate set-aside amount of money that is being pulled off.
So we're going to continue to budget by setting it aside and then allocating it and taking it back.
Correct.
If there's not, because sometimes I'm as you know, the lone vote there that is outraged by the way some of these funds were spent.
Yeah, and you can see in the budget packet on the miscellaneous budget, which is budget 100, there's a line in there showing that money coming back into the county.
Okay.
So it does come back into the county, like I said, and the city and the school district harbor. But we do have to take that and cut it aside as a former RDA.
So this is the budget exercise of how that happens.
Correct.
Okay.
Nice try. Hey. Yeah. Any other comments? I will open it for, yeah, Sheriff Wilson.
First of all, I'd like to thank the board for sticking with us. I know public safety is a critical component of what we provide our community, and the cuts that we were facing were going to be unfortunately extreme. When we first looked at this budget, we started out with $1.25 million and a little more than that in the hole. And so it's only been through a lot of hard work, and I want to give my thanks to Gretchen and Jay, and Neil, Clint, and Joey for being at the table all the time and looking for solutions and not just putting up our hands and giving up. I also want to thank our partners from probation because, again, everybody made some sacrifices to make it all work. The district attorney's office came to the table to help out here at the end. I really want to thank my staff. Without them, none of this is possible. Nobody does this alone, and that is, and we all do it for the purpose of providing the service. Also, our association came to the table at the end and was able to pull a big chunk of that to keep the bodies and the co-workers there to do the jobs that they need to do and to preserve their incomes for their families. And it's a success that it makes us very happy at this time to be able to retain the bodies and keep our positions and our people working, even though we're grieving for the loss of Harold Esparza today. He came to my office on Friday and thanked us for saving the jobs. So that thank you passed on to everyone here. Thank you.
You know, Sheriff, I know I don't need to say it because I know you're working on it, but I just want to extend just not the supervisor's assistance, but also the state association's assistance to continue to go after the money that wasn't available this year from the Department of Corrections, but will be available next year for the beds that were lost in the drug treatment program. So I know you'll stay on top of it. I'm just offering you the assistance, and let's stay in touch.
Any other public comment? Okay, bring it back to the board. Any other comments from board members?
I'd just like to echo the sentiments that Jay and the sheriff said, with thanks to everybody that was involved. It was a long, arduous process and successful. So hopefully it won't take as long the next time. If we seem to drag this out, I mean, I'm sure we'll be starting on next year's budget next week.
Yeah, I would like to hope that, but I'm not confident it's going to be any shorter anytime soon.
Actually, I think they probably started last week, is what my guess is, for next year's budget. So special thank, Supervisor McClure.
I just want to add that I'm kind of sitting here with David saying, is this my 16th year of a budget or my 17th year of a budget? It's been one of the hardest budgets, and they're not getting easier by any means. But I can tell you that the very first year I observed a budget, the Board of Supervisors was actually asking a department head, you know, which professional magazine are you ordering, and should you maybe cancel that one? And are you really needing to have that level of copier, that maybe you should have a reduced copier? And as we have matured as a county, and the department heads have stood up, and the auditor's office and the administration have worked together, it has become an extremely professional event, as opposed to this crazy thing that used to happen up here at the dais with the supervisors, you know, kind of at the 11th hour still trying to find 35 cents in a department rather than relying on capable department heads, capable employees. And I just want to thank the entire county staff throughout the system of everybody who's given to make sure that other people still have jobs, and the professional manner in which this budget has been put together. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the unions. This is the first time that we can truly say that the union fellowship can look at each other, no matter which union you belong to, and know that everybody gave, because in the past it hasn't always been that way. So I think we have matured as a county family, and I want to thank all the staff, as well as all the employees, as well as all the organizations. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would just like to say, in these economic times, everybody has to give. It's real easy for some people to say that their job is more important than somebody else's, but then who's going to pick out who loses their job? We need all of our employees. We need our law enforcement, our public safety. So I appreciate the hard work. I know we were a lot of money out a few months ago, and I didn't think you'd be able to bring it all together. So I appreciate all the help from all the department heads and everybody that contributed and made concessions. We don't like to make concessions.
So I do think it's worth noting that, and just so the public is aware, the county has to balance their budget every year, and that's where the hard decisions have to be made, and we do thank the department heads for making your cuts. Appreciate the sheriff and the district attorney working together to develop the eradication and restitution dealing with marijuana. I think that's any revenue we can find will help save positions and continue to maintain the service that we do have at the county. Special thanks to the SEA also on stepping up to the plate and participating on having to contribute to helping with our budget. So, and I want to especially thank CAO Serena and Assistant CAO Lopez and our Auditor Controller Shad and Personnel Manager Joy Young, as you guys put a lot of work into this. It's been a constant, almost everyday thing here for the last 6 months, and you guys were successful on it, and I appreciate the work you do put into it. So
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'd like to move the recommendations for board actions 1 through 5, which is conclude the public hearing, adopt the recommended budget for the special districts by resolution, to adopt resolution 2012-024, fixing the tax rates, to adopt the resolution 025, setting the appropriate limits for fiscal year 12-13, to approve the side letter agreement with the county and the Sheriff's Association and regarding retirement systems, and to reestablish the following positions, which would be 2 deputy sheriffs, and I'll reiterate, reestablish the following positions: 2 deputy sheriffs, 2 correctional technicians, and 1 correctional officer, effective September 25th, 2012.
Second?
It's been moved and second. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, bring it back to the board. Tony, could you please poll the vote?
Supervisor McNeamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, it's been moved and approved. So we'll take a 3-minute break here, and we'll come back to finish up. Okay, the board's going to go ahead and reconvene. We're a little past the time that we had set up for the recess. We will go to the items that were pulled off the consent agenda. Item number 2, approve and authorize the chair to sign the agreement between the County of Del Norte and RACO Manufacturing and Engineering Company as requested by the Community Development Department. Heidi.
Well, I get it. You just wanted to keep Heidi around longer.
Well, I'm the one that asked to pull it, and I've talked to Heidi, and I don't, she's kind of filling an answer.
Can you hit her mic?
Okay, my question was, that's a 3-year term on the contract, but they only gave out, they said the fee for service, notification services, was just one figure, so I wanted to know whether that was a fee per year or a fee for the 3-year contract, and you're 99% sure that that's a per year?
I spoke with engineering staff during the break, and she indicated that that would be an average amount for that type of service per year.
Okay. Thank you.
Says in a motion.
I will move to approve item number 2.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any public comments? Seeing no public comment, Tony, can you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor McNeamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Moving on to item 8, approve and adopt an official color and black and white version of the county seal and direct staff to avoid waste by continuing to utilize existing stock, that all future orders of letterhead envelopes, business cards, etc. shall include the official county seal as adopted as a request of the Director of Information Technology.
Well, I kind of had an issue with 5 and 6 because it's like, where's Waldo? Because I couldn't find the difference.
Same thing. I had to read.
I'm with you, dear.
And I came up with that same analogy. It's the gold circles.
The gold circles?
Inner and outer, yep.
Oh, I got you. Wow.
I found Waldo.
So, we have a motion, or any questions?
I move we take number 1 as the black and white.
I'd second that.
Good.
Can we get an amendment to that motion to include the other seal, whatever it's going to be?
That's why it was pulled, because it wasn't a recommendation.
I thought you were only supposed to give us a couple of choices when you brought these back.
What are the ones we're doing now?
Expand.
We're doing a black and white and a color one today, right?
Yes.
Yes. So one would be the obvious black and white. Most likely what we're doing right now is number 2. It's the closest to what we're doing right now.
I mean, because there was a couple, I actually had one with...
Over the years, we've had several. So number 3, the only difference is the green and the flowers. Number 4 is like a rendition that takes a lot of different things we've done. Part of the seal that's behind the screen up here and some other things. We did a little informal survey, asked a few people. A lot of people like number 4, but it would be the most expensive to reproduce as we went forward. Not tremendous amount of cost. But from what we found, number 2 is historically what we found. Went back and looked at a lot of the budget books. Had some calls into the Historical Society, but we went back and looked at the documents we have over here, and we could see actually it wasn't until the 70s that they were really starting to get used in the documents to begin with. Probably didn't have a way to reproduce it a lot in the county, so there was lots of different pictures on budget books and so forth.
I like number 6.
So basically, you would recommend, because of cost, number 1 and number 2? Pretty much?
And formally, we actually like number 4 the best.
Huh?
I don't think the costs are tremendous, so if you like number 4, I think that's the most we had comments about. But whatever we do here, there are some changes that have to be made. We do have to, reset some things up with some printers and so forth. But the changes are made. The lighthouse is more appropriate, and we shied away from the trees that were inappropriate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Added the established, the EST at the bottom of it, which wasn't in all of the seals that you had versions on before. So
I move that we adopt seal number 1, seal number 4 as our official.
So the existing motion, David, do you want to amend that?
I'll yield to
You
that
amend
motion.
that? You amend your second?
What second?
One and
There
four.
wasn't
You
a
made a
second.
second.
Oh.
You did make a second. You made a
Oh,
second.
there was just
Second,
one.
yeah.
Oh, you mean on the black and
Yeah.
white? Well, that's a no-brainer.
No, the black and white, he's added 4 as amendment to his motion.
Well, but now you're adding
Oh,
that, and I could be actually against one and
God, the
for
budget hearing went easier
and
than
for the
this. This
other.
is,
Well, I obviously got
Yes.
confused at
you're
some
good with
point.
4? That's your
Yes.
amendment? Okay, 1 and
Because I
4
thought
is the
you
motion
said
right now.
4
Yep.
Sure.
One and
would be
four.
very costly.
At
We'll just
the,
do black
Not
and white.
very
I'm
costly.
sorry, at a previous meeting, the initial numbers we got said multiple colors. The 4 colors would be a lot more. When we actually went out and got some quotes, it only turned out to be about $3 more per ream on letterhead, and
Okay.
most people don't even order the ream anymore. Other things may cost a little bit more, but we think it does stand out pretty good, and
It
that's what
does.
most people seem to like when they looked at it.
Beautiful.
I don't.
Okay. Okay, so any public comment on the motion? Seeing no public comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. 1 and 4 are the official seals of Delaware County now. Okay, going on to, those were the items. Number 9. Number 9, approve and authorize the signing of the attached resolution adopting a policy to opt in to memorandum of agreement with the U.S. Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management, requested by Supervisor Finnegan.
No,
No, it was by me.
Oh, by Supervisor Hemmingson.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point it out. I was kind of wanting to put a light on this because this is kind of a big deal. We have had some difficult times in communicating with the Forest Service for some time, at least in my opinion. And at least this, even though that we have the coordination process that this forest doesn't like very well, and if they like this, I think it's a great deal. I just wanted to comment on it, and I didn't want to drag the meeting out over it, but I did want to say that I think it's a big deal.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved second. Any public comment on this? Okay, and bring it back to the board. Tony, could you poll the vote?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Been moved and approved unanimously. Going to item 23, discuss and take action approving the allocation of Title II RAC funding and direct Community Development Department staff to present projects to the Board of Supervisors for allocation of Title III funding as requested by the Resource Advisory Committee. And I want to thank Supervisor McClure for making sure this was on the agenda. And basically, at this point, we're looking to move funds over. There are some projects that need additional funding, if you read the article in the paper today, and we have the ability to move funds, and these are old Title III funds. So from the previous allocation, that will help us, get low divide rocked on parts of it, and some other projects that are short of funding. So Supervisor McClure, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I would. You have, what came late from the packet, but we have the spreadsheet of the projects that were approved. And our suggestion at the end of the RAC meeting would be that the Sunset High School project, rather than being funded with current RAC funding dollars, we would ask that it would be funded with Title III dollars, and that the brushing project on Low Divide would also be funded with Title III dollars, with the rationale that the Sunset High School project is an educational project and the original Title III dollars allowed for that kind of educational activity, and that the Low Divide brushing project is a actual fire break. And so we're hoping that, and it's our understanding that those would both meet the old Title III proposals. And I don't know if I need affirmation of that from, or not. Do you have?
Yeah, initially when I got the email last week, I wasn't totally clear on what the request was, but having a little better understanding of what the emphasis would be with the two projects. The cursory review of the old Title III, PL 106, 343, whatever it was, the original 2000, where the Title III money, old money stems from, it does seem to qualify.
And if that were the case, then the proposal would be to pull both of those and then take the money at the Sunset High School project, the $40,000, and place it on the Low Divide rock project, bringing it to $100,000. And then taking the low divide brushing dollars and adding an additional third spike to the Coast to Crest Trail. And the surplus, because I think one of the spikes is about $19,000, is that right?
That's what it was.
And then the remaining dollars be placed into the illegal dump cleanup. So I will have to get to you the total of how that splits out on the spike. I didn't get that done. So in essence, we're pulling the brushing project and we're pulling the Sunset High School project, and then we're replacing those dollars into the low divide project, bringing it to $100,000. We're adding $19,000 to the Coast to Crest Trail, and then the remaining dollars go to illegal dump cleanup.
And so what I would suggest, I think that's great for the purposes of the RAC and tracking the Title II money that's available, but for the purposes of Title III, which are the county funds, just have the school district or whoever it was that put the Title II application before the RAC for the Sunset project submit a Title III app that we can process. And the same thing was, I think, was the road department for the low divide project.
Correct.
And we can go ahead and put those before you as Title III applications.
And then go through the process of the
Correct.
45 days.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, I would ask that we would agree to the funding of the RAC recommendations and move these recommendations forward, because they need to be signed by September 30 to be able to get to the dollars of the Title II dollars.
Move to approve.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to second. Any public comment? Bring it back to the board. Any comment from board members? Okay, Tony, can you please pull the vote?
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 24. Review and approve the plans and bid specs for required obstruction clearance project at Ward Field in Gaston, California, and direct staff to submit plans and bid specs to Caltrans for approval and grant funding as requested by airport manager.
Good morning, Ward.
Good morning.
We took a look at this project at the beginning of the year after our Caltrans safety inspection, pointed out all the trees that are still in the way up there. And you authorized me to develop a project, and that's what I have before you tonight or today. And with your approval, I'll send this on to Caltrans for their approval, at which point they will give us a $120,000 grant to accomplish the work, which of course will come back to you for acceptance. A lot of these trees have grown up since they were cut back in 2005. Some of them were missed. We resurveyed it, and the map I gave you shows the number of trees we still have to deal with within those yellow boundaries, which are the limits of the Caltrans variance. Anything past the yellow boundary is grandfathered in and won't be touched. But as it was in 2005, I'm sure it'll be a controversial project.
Have we gotten some feedback from homeowners out there yet?
I haven't reached out to them yet. I was waiting for you to approve it first.
I would move to approve.
Yeah. Oh, you need to, can we vote on this and then I'll let you?
Along with a comment, there's several mountainsides out there that's got a lot of
You'd
trees
like
on
those
them.
down? I'll get right on that.
I've
yeah.
flown in there many
Little hard
times.
to fly out of
Yeah,
there.
it's,
Many times. It'd sure be nice if it was a little bit.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? No public comment. Tony, could you pull the vote, or pull the board, please?
Supervisor McNamer?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Yes. And Supervisor McNamer, we got to let you go because you've got a...
Excuse, thank you.
Okay, yes.
Okay, item 25, accept the attached application for the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority for Title III funding in the amount of $12,000 and direct the clerk of the board to publish a description of the proposed project in the local newspaper and to forward the proposed project to the Resource Advisory Committee for their review and comment as requested by the Deputy Director of the Community Development Department.
This is a companion project to the one that you...
I so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Seeing no public.
May I just add one thing? The application states that it's in the name of the Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, Baccarat, when in fact it should be in the county's name because it's for Ward Field.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Eddie.
so-
Anything else you want to add to that?
So I will amend my motion to make that change.
Then the second
Yes.
is amended too. Both have been amended. Public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the board. Tony, could you pull the vote, please?
Supervisor Finnegan?
Yes.
Supervisor McClure?
Yes.
Supervisor Hemmingson?
Yes.
Chair Sullivan?
Yes. It's been moved and approved. We'll go on to item 26. Consider miscellaneous legislative and budget matters pertinent to the County of Del Norte. Authorize the chair to sign and send appropriate letters with respect to matters pending before the state or federal governments.
We don't have any letters before you today. Supervisor Fagan hit on a lot of the big issues regarding legislation right now, and they are in recess, and our budget issue was solved for at least a day today.
Nice.
I do have one thing.
Yeah.
That we all of us received yesterday, I think, in the mail from the state and national parks about the hostel being built and the proposed hostel sites on Inderts Beach Road and possibly Mill Creek Watershed site. And there is a website number that I haven't been able to research yet, but I was hoping that we could request that staff, either someone from community development or administration, take a look to the comment periods and when that's going to be, so we can make sure that we weigh in on the planning process and when as the document is being prepared.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
And I don't know whether it'll be appropriate for next meeting or not, but let's keep track of what's going on with Sutter Coast and the process, and if we need to weigh in again or do something different.
There has been an extension to the 17th. The hearing has been extended to the 17th.
Of October?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's probably premature.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting now.